Hello everyone, my name is Josh and welcome to One Whimsical and Interesting Musings, and today I'm going to be talking about the works of David Cronenberg. David Cronenberg is a Canadian filmmaker who pretty much got his start in the late 70s with films like Crimes of the Future and Shivers and other things like Rabid, The Brood, and later films like The Fly, Dead Ringers, Crash, Ash, the list goes on. David Cronenberg's films mostly focus on the subject of body horror, or at least his earlier films depicted this particular subgenre of horror. And for the most part, it is a very interesting perspective of the horror genre. It very much taps into a fear that I think we all have, like whenever we have, certain difficulties with ourselves and we have to go to a doctor. It's a very terrifying experience to kind of address parts of our bodies that actually understand that our bodies can change, and in some cases our bodies can sometimes have certain things wrong with us that we might not fully understand, and that's actually really quite a good premise for a horror film. So a lot of his films, even though they do focus the majority of the time on body horror, his other films and even his films beyond, the likes of The Fly and Dead Ringers and The Brood and Rabid and Shivers, they mostly focus on the theme of identity and the idea of, what does it mean to be a human being? What does it mean to be you? Like, say, for example, if we were to take, for example, the film Dead Ringers, the whole entire point of that film is the subjectivity of duality, the idea that essentially there are two people in different bodies with different minds, but they look the same and they sound the same, is a very interesting idea. In fact, in Dead Ringers, they flirt with this concept by having the two main characters, Beverly and Elliot Mantle, occasionally swap places whenever one twin gets bored of another partner. And that's really quite terrifying, especially if you don't know that the person that you are dating is in fact one of a twin. It can feel very kind of icky and very kind of not very nice, because there's a certain amount of trust that goes into relationships, and sometimes when that trust is broken with something like this, it can be pretty soul crushing and it can knock your confidence a bit. So the fact that Claire's character in Dead Ringers kind of got the sense of, oh, she wanted to throw a glass of champagne in his face and call him a bunch of sickos, and she even calls one of the Mantle twins Dracula at one point, which I thought was hilarious. But yeah, this film is pretty good for exploring the theme of identity, and of course a majority of David Cronenberg's themes do talk about the topic of identity, especially with The Fly, with the iconic line of, I had a dream once that I felt like I had a dream where I was an insect who dreamed he was a man and loved it, but now I feel the dream is over and the insect is awake. That's such a good line, because it basically has this very negative connotation that Seth Brundle is essentially being possessed, very slowly possessed by this parasite that is the fly, and the fly is getting almost its own sense of agency through the act of essentially doing this particular transformation. And it's a very creepy idea, but the idea of identity is kind of a thing that's been a constant throughout most of his work. And I definitely do have my favourites. I do think Dead Ringers is my favourite of David Cronenberg's original set of films, his body horror sort of genre. A lot of people like other films of his, like History of Violence, which I also like, and Eastern Promises. They're both really good films, and I both think that they're very interesting, unique takes and expansions on David Cronenberg's original ideas of the body, our fear of what our bodies will turn into, that they will rot, they will decay, and they will, eventually wrinkle and start to, become, something entirely different, is a constant theme even through the other films in his filmography, such as Eastern Promises, History of Violence, and other films. But what's very interesting about David Cronenberg as a filmmaker is he constantly takes the ideas that we're all very familiar with in his work, and he essentially evolves them. He essentially puts them through a stage of evolution where pretty much Dead Ringers is the evolutionary gap between his original body horror films and his films more about identity and psychology. And that's something that is a wonderful thing in a lot of his works. And his films are also really funny. I love how immediately humorous his films are and how interesting he can be as a filmmaker. He can also be a very intelligent writer. A lot of his dialogue is immediately quotable, such as the insect is awake line, as well as the line of as well as the line of I've actually forgotten it. But yeah, there was a line, I think, in The Fly, where these two characters are having a discussion about steaks, and he basically says, try all these different pieces of steak, and Veronica, played by Gina Davis, basically tries one and she doesn't like it, and she goes, it could use some finesse, but it still tastes like a steak. Kind of saying that, you know, it's not really like it. It's kind of like almost like a manufactured version of this piece of meat that she bought and cooked herself. And that I thought was really funny. There's a lot of other great lines in this, one of which that I can't repeat because it's very crude. But I really do like a lot of the dialogue in his films. I really do think he's a great dialogue writer. And I recently finished his novel, which he published in 2014, called Consumed, which is about a couple who are very tech savvy. They know a lot about technology. They know a lot about iPhones and you know, the latest technology, iPads, various different forms of, you know, Skype and other things. Very, very, you know, very technologically advanced stuff. But they come across a French couple called the Aristogys, and Celestine and Aristide Aristoguy. And they are essentially philosophers and lecturers who are supposedly involved in a scandal in which one of them ate the other. And both of these two main protagonists, Nathan and Naomi, who are this technology couple, are trying to investigate what really happened in this particular scandal that supposedly took place. And it's very funny, it's very interesting, it does feel like it's a very richly layered story, and the characterization is incredible. The way David Cronenberg basically uses the main character's form of technology to kind of tell you a lot about them and about their relationship with each other, that I thought was such an incredible idea, and it was such an incredible touch for a characterization means of telling a story, because usually a lot of authors will, and even the best authors are guilty of this, they'll just basically tell you what the character is thinking, or basically give you an impression of what the character is thinking so that you can come to your own conclusions. But the fact that he uses something that they're very familiar with and that they have a liking for as a means of kind of sort of bridging the gap between them and making them, you know, understand the other and what the other's trying to do in this particular case is absolutely incredible. Like, there's this one scene where Nathan is showing Naomi photographs of this girl that he's basically taken in the nude to pretty much show that he's interested in medical science and medical journalism. And she can tell by the way he photographed this woman that he is attracted to her in some way. And that I thought was actually really clever, but it's also really kind of terrifying that you kind of don't know how your other half is going to react to how you're basically, you know, trying to do a job and you're trying to earn a living, but then of course you're trying to show her these pictures, but then you kind of get this impression that, oh, I know that you're attracted to this person based on how you photographed them, and it really does add a certain layer of creepiness to the whole entire idea. But it is an interesting concept. It is kind of light on the body horror stuff, but I actually didn't mind that. I actually liked the fact that David Cronenberg was able to focus on the characters a lot more, and that's something that I keep going back to his films for. The characterization and the performances are the mainstay of his films. Yes, we love the body horror, we love the insanity, we love quotes like "Long live the new flesh, death to Videodrome." That's such a good line. But that, I really just think, is one of the extra bits of intrigue to this particular story. The rest of the time, you're basically just trying to get to know these characters and understand how they work. And that's one of the highlights of a lot of David Cronenberg's films, is he knows how to do character, he knows how to do psychology, he knows how to really kind of represent these characters in a very vulnerable way and really kind of make it work and make it, seem like it's very authentic and interesting. Very few filmmakers would go to the lengths that David Cronenberg would go to for a lot of his films. Like, say, for example, in one of his films that was banned in Britain called Crash, he basically takes a topic which is very controversial and he tries to essentially create characters who you're not meant to sympathise with, but he really does a good job of trying to make you at least see from their point of view, see that they don't want to do this, but something in their brains, something in the way they're wired, was able to make them do this stuff. And I'm not really going to go that much into detail about Crash. If you want to know more, I would definitely recommend looking it up, or at least, trying to get a copy of the film if you want to check it out for yourself, because it is a good film, but I do think it's one of those films that is heavily controversial. So be wary if you do decide to check it out. But I will definitely say that if you do want to check out the novel Consumed or any of David Cronenberg's works, I would definitely recommend doing so, because he has recently just released a new film called Crimes of the Future, which I'm really looking forward to seeing. And I absolutely love David Cronenberg. I really do want more people to watch and in some cases review his stuff, because I do think he is an interesting filmmaker and he deserves a little bit more attention, and I think he does. I think he has his own little following, but what I think is important is that his films are really good and they know how to really kind of get you thinking, even if you kind of just find yourself going, well, that was an experience. That's all you can really say for your first time, but that hopefully with multiple viewings of a lot of his films, you can start to appreciate what he was trying to do with the themes of identity and the themes of our relationship with our own bodies, our relationship with the bodies of other people and other such things are kind of a very important element of a lot of his films. And that's what I'm really going to say on that. I really do think people should check out more of his films as a gateway to some of his films. I would definitely recommend The Fly. That's a classic. I would definitely recommend people check that one out, starring Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis. Both do an exceptionally incredible job, and what's even more wonderful is it's a romance story, and the two people cast in it were a couple in real life at one point, so that also adds an extra layer of charm and uniqueness to proceedings. The next film I'd recommend in a heartbeat is Dead Ringers. I think Dead Ringers is such an incredible film. A double performance by Jeremy Irons. He's fantastic in this film. I really do think that he literally has made me cry once or twice because of his performance as Beverly Mantle. And I'd also recommend films like A History of Violence and Eastern Promises, as well as a film called Existenz. And that film is basically Videodrome. And I'd also recommend Videodrome. I should recommend Videodrome, because if you are going to check out any of David Cronenberg's films, that's one of the films that you should check out. But I wouldn't recommend it being your first. I'd definitely give The Fly and Dead Ringers a watch if you do manage to find a copy, or if it happens to be showing on your local streaming services or your own streaming service. Then I'd recommend those two first, just to sort of whet your appetite, as it were. But if you do think you can handle stuff like Existenz and Videodrome, I would definitely recommend those to you as well. And before I go, yes, I know I'm recording this in my pajamas, but I will be, doing more reviews like this, and I will be trying to do more reviews on various different topics. Like I said, I do more, multimedia stuff like novels, films, book reviews, and other such things. I will be doing more book reviews and various other things. It just depends on what you like, and it all just depends on what I enjoy and what I like. So definitely give this video a like and subscribe if you want to see more content. And have a good day and all the best.